podcast series from Diverse. Today's guest is Jacqie McWilliams, the commissioner of the CIAA. And before we get started, first thing I want to know is what's the real HU, Hampton or Howard?
Hampton, but if you want to go by the birth year, Howard.
Okay. I saw you went to Hampton, so I had to find that out.
I'm a HU, but there's a constant battle between the institutions. I'm just glad I graduated from an HU.
From an HU, I heard that. No, I get it. I think that was one of my goal schools, honestly, at first, but it just didn't work out that way. But I am definitely a child of the CIAA. My mother was a Winston-Salem State alum.
Oh, the Red.
She was in the marching band there, and she played basketball when it was a club sport. It wasn't a intercollegiate sport there, but
wow.
She loved it there. She was, I think, Big House Gaines was her teacher. She also worked for him. She was classmates with Earl the Pearl and Carl Eller. So
wow.
So growing up, we always went to whenever Winston-Salem played Virginia Union or Bowie State up here, we would go to the games and always went to the tournament. Well, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times definitely went to the CIAA tournament. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's like home, if you will. But so speaking of the CIAA tournament, what was your first experience like at a CIAA tournament?
Wow, I was a student athlete. My first experience, I didn't know what it was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was at HU at Hampton when I played basketball there, and I still have my programs from there. I've been trying to make sure I've collected all my programs of every tournament that I've been at, even as working at the CIAA. But I just remember, I believe Bob Mormon, he was the first full-time commissioner of the CIAA.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember it just being a great experience. Crowded, you couldn't find a seat. I would think I played in the Norfolk Scope and I played in Richmond College when I was in college. And it was a community affair. It was something different that, I never experienced in high school.
Right.
So to go to an HBCU and play in CIAA was pretty cool. I don't think I appreciated all of it though till after I left. You know what I'm saying? Like, I knew that I was at something special, but I don't think I recognized what that special was until later on.
Right.
After I played.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And I've always loved it that I'm going to say probably one of the few, I know there are other conferences that do it as well, where they have the men and the women play at the same time at the same place. So that's been a good thing. So yeah, when you said the Scope in Richmond, I remember going there as well. I think the last time I went, it was either in Winston-Salem or Raleigh. I can't remember.
Yeah. When I started working for the CIAA the first time, we were in Winston. It's funny because I was trying to find my Hampton University when I graduated, my, what do you call it, the stole, whatever you wear over your gown. And I had buttons from CIAA tournaments from then. And back, I mean, I didn't even realize that they were back when I was, from Winston-Salem and then Raleigh. I had just pinned them on there because I had nowhere else to put them. But when I was working for the CIAA the first time, we were in Winston. And then when we went to Raleigh, that was my last place before I left to go to a new job. But yeah, it's a community cultural affair. I love it. It's where we meet each other, where we get, it doesn't matter what school you went to, like we're friends with one another. Yeah.
And I think it's hard to explain to anybody who's never been, or who just doesn't even know that. I mean, I think a lot of people may think of it as just a basketball tournament, but it really is more than just that. And why do you think, like I've been to the MEAC tournament, for example. I mean, I'm not trying to downgrade them at all, but it's just night and day. Why do you think the CIAA has that following that it does?
You know, it was the first conference, HBCU conference amongst our four, and
Right.
many of the schools that left the CIAA started the MEAC. Not all of them, but many of them did.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those fans still come back to the CIAA. So we're still connected to the Morgan States, the Howards, the Maryland, the A&T. Like I ran into here in Charlotte, the A&T people who grew up in the CIAA days. They go to both tournament, but they're not going to miss a CIAA tournament. I mean, I think there's just something, even when I'm long gone, far away, it's that legacy and it's the traditions of the conference that people just gravitate to. You just say CIAA and they're like, oh, you going to the CI? It's just that affair. And they mostly connect it to basketball. Yeah. And I think because of the rich history of the Big House games, the Earl of Pearl, the Virginia Union, Oakleys. I mean, those types of things have really created this impact of opportunity for players to play in this conference and then to go to the NBA. You're always looking for the next best player coming out of this conference, now male and female.
Funny you say that. I was reading last week, I guess the NFL draft was. And I was sitting there watching, and Joshua Williams, Fayetteville, was chosen. And not only was he the first chosen HBCU player, I think, in almost 2 years. CIAA competes at the Division II level. He was chosen before any of the players that completed at the Division I. So because there were a couple of other players drafted, and I also saw recently. Now this was a SWAC school, but I think her name was Williams Holiday or something like that from Jackson State. Yeah, in the WNBA draft. So kind of a segue to something I did want to talk about was the the social justice movement going on and all that a lot of Black athletes are talking about going back to HBCUs. With that, I'm obviously you're aware of that. So is the CIAA doing anything different to try to attract some of these student athletes today?
I think what the CIAA and all of our HBCUs do, our doors are always open. You always have a home for us. We have a lot of students that have transferred even before that didn't have great experience, didn't feel culturally connected, that come to our schools and our conference, and that's always interesting to me when I find out that they transferred and ask them why, whether they felt like they weren't treated fairly or didn't have the same opportunities. But with the movement, I think that just kind of opened up and enlightened that this could be a place for them, could excel, and there's a community that's going to rally around them, not just to get a good opportunity to play the game, but we're also going to make sure you graduate. So I remember earlier in the movement, I had an interview, and they said, you think kids will want to come to your schools, or nothing's different except we're trying to grow and compete with the schools around us, but our foundation and who we are is still the same. Our doors are still open and available. The world changed, right, and decided that HBCUs weren't the place to go. Right? Obviously, segregation, integration, that changed everything with access and opportunity, but the HBCUs are still culturally connected in their communities, providing jobs, creating space for students that may not be able to get into that big university to come to your school and have a good experience playing the game. We may not have all the bigger facilities and all those are the things that you just how do you compete? For me, how do we compete with the schools that continue to build all these facilities and have all these things that attract athletes? We have some schools in our conference that don't have track, but they have national athletes. They're competing. And so I think we've always learned how to work with less. and build great foundations for those athletes that come with great work habits to still learn how to win with little.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you just said, learn how to do with less. I think that's something we just have learned as a people.
We have, and it's exhausting, Ralph, at times, because at one point we're like, why do we always have to feel like we're scrambling and scratching and trying to? But I just think our schools in our conference, and I think all of we're doing our best, and those young people who want to come to our schools are supposed to be there, and those who don't, that's okay as well. But we always have a place for them. I'm always recruiting young people, and I say, white or black, red or yellow, let us be on your top 5, your top 10 list. Look at all of our institutions across the country and see where you can fit in. We have a lot of young, we have a lot of athletes, white, female, males, golf, very diverse. Like, you can help diversify our institutions as much as we can help diversify other institutions as well. It's always interesting, the dynamics of, why students would choose to come to us and why we choose to go to other institutions.
I'm literally just thinking of this right now. When it comes to recruiting, how much of it is recruiting this? I mean, obviously, the largest part is obviously recruit the student athlete, but how much of it goes into educating the coaches of these players about coming to an HBCU? And I ask that because I was saying to you in the beginning that, like, my goal, I mean, all I knew growing up was HBCU sports. I didn't really know anything about West Point, which is where I initially went. And then I went to William and Mary and played ball there. So I wanted to go to 2 schools, Howard or Grambling. I didn't care which one. That's where I wanted to go. And when I signed on signing day, at a Division I PWI, my coach asked me afterwards, was I happy? And I said, yeah, but I really wanted to go to Howard or Grambling. And he looked at me shocked. He's a white man who grew up in Yorktown, Virginia, and actually went to Hampton. You made me think about the diversity you're talking about that are at HBCUs. I was shocked when I found out he went to Hampton, because I didn't think, if you weren't Black, I didn't think you could go there. But he was saying, hey, man, my family was poor and that school was close. That's just where I went. So his reason to me, he says, oh, a lot of those schools tried to recruit you, but I told them, he gets good grades, he's good, so he wouldn't want to go there. And I told him, well, you should let people choose. But I wonder how much of that recruitment did you guys have to do as far as educating the institutions, these high schools? Because I talk to a lot of people, and I'm sure you do as well, who feel that HBCUs are less than.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, which is so disappointing because, but, as Black people, we're known to be less than. Right? As people of color, as a woman of color, we're considered to be less than. So we're always trying to justify and prove ourselves to others that we're not. And we work so hard, to make sure that kids are graduating, to make sure that athletes feel at home. We do which we should do anyways. And it's, to get more funding, to get sponsorships, to get people to see the value. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to even talk to Black and brown parents that say, my kid will never go to an HBCU. And I'm
really? You get that?
Like,
wow.
Who would even say that?
Yeah, no, I was saying that I was somewhat shocked. I mean, but I'm not shocked to hear a parent say that a parent would say that, that they wouldn't send their child to HBCU. And, that's falling into that narrative of believing what you hear, what the media tells you or people tell you or our society tells you. But that's unfortunate. So, obviously coming up soon here in June is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. So I wanted to ask you about your experience as a basketball and volleyball player at Hampton, what you saw then and what you see now for today's female athletes. What differences?
Man, I'm like, if I had all the stuff them athletes have now, I might have been really a baller.
Wow.
But you know what? And maybe if I had all those things, I wouldn't be so passionate about how I advocate for women and men, women in sports. As an athlete at Hampton, um, we didn't struggle, but you saw other teams, the football team, obviously, basketball team. I played women's basketball and I played volleyball. I was a two-sport athlete. So some of our Olympic sports didn't have the same, access to stuff. But when I look at Hampton now and I see the players and the scholarships that they have, they're Division I, I think it's a lot better for them. We still have a ways to go though, Ralph. I think, the parity and the access to our athletes to having scholarships, way beyond just what the minimums are required.
Right.
It's just not, the maximum is 10, but you only have 3, I coached as well. I coached at Virginia Union and we didn't have scholarships. When I played, there was a lot of part-time coaches. They also taught, like the women, they were teachers, educators. I think Title IX obviously opened up the door. It's for both men and women, right? But the women were more behind. We were behind. We didn't even, CIAA is not even celebrating 50 years of having sports in our conference. Although we're celebrating 50 years, we're still 3 to 4 years short of celebrating college participation for women in this conference, which is kind of sad. We did the 75th anniversary in 2020 for men's basketball, but we did it for basketball period in the conference and included the women. So for me, I think leadership has to continue to be intentional and thoughtful about what inclusive behaviors are, not just for Title IX, but equity, LGBTQ, all those things that are important to the health and mental wellness of our student athletes, our coaches, and administrators like myself. Like I want to be in an environment I can thrive. And so when you don't have enough uniforms, or you got kids crammed on a van or a bus, that's not, those are experiences that we learn and we obviously laugh and appreciate it as we have gotten older. Like, you remember when we were all, or I was coaching, you remember when I had to drive my athletes to, and I'm just hoping, and what I'm seeing is those things are not, I love going to softball championship and our softball players are on big buses with their school names on the side, or they've got, other buses. Coaches can get off and just coach, and be in an environment where they can really see success in a different way because they're not thinking about those things that they shouldn't have to as coaches and athletes. And so I think we've come a long way. I still think we still have a ways to go. And I don't think it's so much about Title IX gender equity. I think it's just more having the resources across everything, particularly our HBCUs, to provide better experiences for our students. And I think in our conference, our presidents are truly aware, and COVID showed us without sports, it just doesn't feel right. And so there is an appreciation of Title IX and equity and diversity and inclusion. And we don't write it in everything because we think that's what we should be doing. But, in some ways, as some of my board chair, Dr. Bro, and Abdullah, my outgoing chair at Virginia State, we've talked about, we don't write it because it's natural to us, but we probably need, because it may not be natural to others, right? So be a little bit more intentional where we have language that holds our membership and people accountable for what they need to do for these young people and for coaches. Coaches pay women on my staff. I'm like, I need a I lost one, but our team is killing it. I have young women on our staff and a mix of it, but I'm missing that senior leadership of experience that every department should have and give voice in that position outside of myself.
I mean, it's funny. I was sitting here, I was listening to you, and I was thinking about it. Just recently, I was in St. Louis. It was either late February, early March, and a softball team was staying at the same hotel I was in, and I was like, man, this would have never happened when I was playing football, and this was back in the '80s, right? They were literally had lunch at Starbucks. It was like each
Oh,
player
wow.
went up and ordered, and then the coach paid for it, and that's what they ate, you know. I was like, man, when we had lunch, we at the hotel, we went into a banquet hall or
A
something like
room.
that, and
Yeah.
everything was catered and this, that, and the other. And it's not that I'm naive and didn't know, but that was like one of the first or few times that was literally in my face that I saw the differences. Now, the baseball team could be experiencing the same thing, but I definitely saw the difference between a revenue sport like football versus an
Yeah.
Olympic sport like, softball.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what's interesting, Ralph? You know, there's not that many sports that really are generating revenue, right?
Hmm.
Those are just the games that you sell tickets, but they're not really being with all the expenses. I mean, there's probably out of the thousands of schools that we have, there's probably maybe 12 or a handful or a dozen of schools that are really revenue based. But
Hmm.
most of us in athletics are operating in deficit.
Right.
And so, but we always talk about the football and the basketball give you the greatest exposure. And I'm always thinking about that myself because in our conference, the CIAA basketball tournament is 60% of our budget, right? If that tournament doesn't go well with sponsorships, then we can't support all the 12 other sports that we have. And so
Hmm.
you put all this investment, and I don't want to feel guilty or bad about it. It's the reality
It's the reality.
that
It
we
is.
share with our athletes. But because we do that, it doesn't mean that we have to lessen the experience for our student athletes and other championships, and we don't.
Right.
And we have to find the resources and spend to give them signage and gifts. And when I first got here, like across the board, we're not just doing rings for football. You know, we're let's get rid of all the rings and figure out what is it that we can and it's affordable, so all these student athletes feel special. And where
Right.
people have found it a little bit, but at the end of the day, you know, if we're about creating the greatest experience and opportunities for these student athletes, you just don't do it for one, right?
Hmm.
I mean, we're a community and a family that should really be providing these opportunities for all. And it's complicated because of the revenue and where it comes from. And like the softball, I mean, I would imagine, you know, I remember when I was coaching volleyball, and again, we didn't do table, but some of our players, that's what they wanted. That's
Right.
what they like. You know, they'd rather go to Starbucks and have a little light snack
Yeah, and you're right.
than sitting
And
at a
that
table. Yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That could have
So
been
it's
the
different
case.
because women, I coached with men's basketball for Virginia Union with Coach Robbins for a year,
Hmm.
but I coached for women's basketball for 3 years. And it's night and day with personalities and how women play the game. We all play the game, but how you manage your teams are so much different than
Hmm.
it's different. That's all I can tell you. But you know, with the woman female need doesn't mean it's different or more. They just may not want to eat those things. And particularly now, these young people, they vegans and pescatarians, and they
Right.
have all these dietary things that we didn't have. We went to the Golden Corral and you better eat all you can because that's what you
Exactly.
get.
Right. No, I mean, I appreciate that perspective because I didn't even think about that way.
Yeah.
That could have been exactly what they wanted. And it made me think about when we were in college. Sometimes they would bring us night, as we have our meetings, we have night meals. And we told them we didn't want this stuff. And we told them we wanted KFC and McDonald's or whatever. And they started bringing us that. So you're right. That could
Yeah.
have been what they were asking for. Back to the revenue you were just talking about. And that's a very high number that you just quoted there, the 60% to support your other programs coming from the tournament. So I guess two things are out there that I'm thinking about. A, we had COVID for the past couple of years, and you guys changed sites to Baltimore. What effect did that have, if any?
Oh my goodness. A lot of prayer. A lot of prayer. You
Right.
know, this is the thing. I think at the end of the day, we ended up coming out okay. I mean,
Hmm.
we started like everybody, and you go into this mode like, how are we going to operate? How are we going to manage? I think, having a board of 12 members, very thoughtful, considerate, understanding. I mean, we made decisions for the best interest of the conference, not NCAA, not any other conference. We were watching trends, but we knew the community that we served and what decisions were important for us. So based on that, strategically, our budget and finance committee, myself, I mean, we really thought about how can we keep the conference whole? How am I going to be able to keep 10 people on my staff when revenue could be probably, we won't be selling tickets. The blessing is, the strategy that we made from the ticket assessment, the board agreed we would do at least half of that assessment still. We did the virtual tournament. The virtual tournament was just as much as being on ground. I think the creativity of us thinking about out the box, how can we still have a week tournament without basketball on the ground, but everyone still could be connected, and Baltimore is still the host. And will Baltimore continue to pay in this agreement in order to do that? And when we figured that piece out, Ralph, I mean, we did okay. I mean, everybody got hit, but we applied for PPP monies. We received 2 grants. We got forgiveness. The NCAA still, in that year gave us the grant dollars that they distributed because we had the NCAA D2 had the resources to do that for its members. And I think we just ended up like everybody, you decided and knew things that you really didn't need that you wanted that just wasn't important anymore. So we made some cuts in places and we fared out well. We did our audit and I was like, yes, thank you, Jesus. Like we came out better than probably if we would have went through that year. And so it was tough though, because I felt like probably like you and everybody else, we spent all of our time every single day trying to figure out how do we keep the doors open, keep these student athletes well, our coaches, everyone was going through, the feeling of disconnect, closer than athletic directors are probably closer than ever for their weekly Monday chat and choose. We created the Mac Attack show. So we got creative, and our sponsors, let me tell you, they were committed. They said, it's with you. And we believe in your mission. We believe in who you are as a conference. Right. And we're going to do this with you. And that for me, that was a scary, because most of our funding comes from our partners through our tournament. But when we did the virtual platform, they got creative. And they probably were able to engage with more students than ever on the platform. So yeah, was it tough? It was. We were burnt out, but it was worth the learning and the challenge to figure out new opportunities, and then what we could do with Baltimore. And Baltimore, again, like our partnership was solid. Like Al Hutchinson and myself, we were very intentional about how we continue to highlight this partnership, create experiences for everybody that we can in the entertainment space. And we did.
I think the tournament was in the scope first, right? Then it went to Richmond, or was it the other way?
It might have been in the,
I think it was in the scope first and then in Richmond. And then when it went to Winston-Salem, it just like devastated me. You know what I mean? I'm like, I've got to change. Why are they doing this?
I know.
I'm not a change person, I guess. So, and I was looking at the history. You guys were in Charlotte probably for the longest of any place. What prompted the move to Baltimore?
Yeah, 15 years. I think when I came on board, what year were they started in 2006 in Charlotte. I came in 2012, so we're already 6 years in. And then we were going to go out to bid in 2014, but Charlotte came with an extension package and moved our offices to Charlotte from Virginia. We were in Hampton.
Exactly.
The offices have been in, but before I took the job, in my interview process, there was a conversation or dialogue about the office moving. And when I went through minutes and stuff, there was because majority of our schools are in North Carolina. And Hampton had left out, Norfolk had left out. So in Hampton, we were about an hour and a half to two from Virginia Union or from Elizabeth City. But we could still, in Baltimore to Bowie, 2 hours. So 2 hours there, which wasn't bad. But when we moved south with the extension to Charlotte, we moved here, and that put us through 2020. The board, particularly, we don't like to do long-term agreements. We know what that has looked like with the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt like it was time to bid. Charlotte was great, but there were some things that I just could not get done in the current arrangement that we needed to reset ourselves. And so we did. We put our bid out on exactly things that we needed to have for this tournament, and Baltimore just showed up very differently. I don't want to say surprisingly, because Al and the leadership there, they said, if you're serious, we're coming to get this tournament. And they did. And, it wasn't just about the financial for us. It was really the support, the regional, the local, and the community support that you need for a tournament this magnitude. I mean, we're running a $2.5 million event.
Yeah.
And to have the infrastructure of support from, the Ravens to the Oreos, to the museums, to the governor's office, to the mayor's office, to city council, to the Black businesses, changed the whole. We're getting ready to roll out our economic impact. I wish I could share it, but it's pretty exciting in a first year after COVID to hit the numbers. And Baltimore is excited. And we knew we would do well. I don't think we expected to do so well in our first year. So my expectations, I'm very optimistic, but I just said, look, if people show up, they do. If they don't, we are going to crown 2 champions. That's what I know. We're going to give these athletes the in-venue experience. And we did. But the in-venue experience got better because there were so many students from our schools. Presidents bust their kids up. It was very different, Ralph, than it was. The 2020 tournament 75th anniversary was fun here. Let me just say that. It was our last year in Charlotte. Everybody came back. But our first year in person in Baltimore was an experience that I'm so excited about next year. I think people, when we put our tickets out, if you don't get them, you're going to be left out. That's how I feel. That good.
Baltimore's only an hour from here, so I might have to get up there.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's the alignment right now for us is perfect. Culturally aligned, leadership aligned, and passion aligned.
Yeah.
Like it's just like we're all in. And trust me, we have our struggles on the backside. We go back and forth, but somehow we always come back to the middle of why we started this partnership. And it's friendly, it's cordial, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that in COVID that we could be as creative as we did to have a virtual tournament and be successful. They did their part, we did our part. We had National Van Wagner Sports and Entertainment, who's our media rights partner. They did their part. I mean, it was so diverse from, Hispanic sororities to, 5-year-olds. I mean, it's just all about who CIAA is. And Ralph, you grew up with your parents in the space. And so once you're in, it's for life. Like,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
It's for life. It truly is. It's not, even if you didn't go to a CIAA school, there's
that's exactly what I was getting ready to say.
That you
yeah, no, I was ready to say that. My mother was originally from Winston-Salem. And I have a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins that still live there who some have never stepped foot on a college campus in regards to an education, but they don't miss that tournament.
I worked at Norfolk State. I was only there a year and a half or so, I think, but and I'm a Hampton grad, so working at Norfolk was like, oh my gosh, but I loved it because it's the same thing. I remember Bobby Dandridge and I were talking at this tournament, and how Norfolk State was little state to Virginia State. But when he went to college, they stayed in the houses that were around there because they didn't have all the dorms and all that other stuff at the time. And so the community always has supported HBCUs. The same thing with Winston-Salem or Shaw, or all of our schools. There's this support of athletes or students, period. And those is a generation of people who did not go to college, but they feel so connected to the institution, and they come to the tournament too. It's an incredible place to lead. It's so much more than the game for me.
Yeah, just sitting here, you said Bobby Dandridge, and I was like, huh. He was one of my favorite players growing up, playing for the Bullets. And I just Googled it. I just Googled it. I never knew he was from Richmond and went to Norfolk State. I just looked that up.
Yeah, he's from Richmond. He lives in Norfolk now, but this is funny, Ralph. At the tournament, I had dinner with him and Earl the Pearl.
Okay.
So, oh my gosh. And we laughed and laughed. Bobby Dandridge, he was the assistant men's coach at Hampton when I was playing.
Really?
So interestingly, yeah, so this is the thing. I'm from Colorado. I didn't know much about CIAA and HBCUs. I just wanted to go to Hampton to play. My family's from SWAC country. I knew about Jackson State. I knew about Southern. My sister went to Alabama State. She was younger than me, but I knew SWAC schools, and I don't even know if I knew conferences, how they were connected coming out of high school. But when I came to Hampton and he was coaching with Zeke Avery, I didn't know like he was like a baller. I just knew he was coach. So I call him Coach Dandridge. I never thought of him as this famous NBA player.
Absolutely. He wore number 10.
Yeah.
He was my favorite. I wore 10 in Little League basketball.
Wow.
Whatever they called it because of him. Wow.
He's incredible. Like I call him like Coach Dandridge. I said, I know you're famous, but I know you as coach. Like I had no idea when but it's the same thing, like the Big House games. Like, you know, I don't know if you've seen Black Magic, the video. Yeah. That's my pregame every year. I watch it twice because I'm always picking up something every time I watch it. But when I watch it, I'm not watching it as a celebrity eye. I'm watching it as these are people that I actually got to spend time with as an athlete and as an administrator in this conference. The Big House games, sitting right next to him, or McClendon, like talking to him about the banquet, getting ready for, you know, it is just, so you see all these accolades, which they so deserve. But for us who grew up in this conference, that we're part of their legacy, you know, I have these aha moments, I guess, like, wow, like I saw them as coach. I knew who they were, but I didn't know really until I got older and could really appreciate the value of the experience I had as an athlete in this conference, being around the Dandridge, the Big House games, the Dr. Peggy Green, you know, the women that I saw. When you say you want to be what you want to see, I got to see that in the CIAA. And that's why this conference is so special, and it's so much beyond just the sport. It truly is a community for the nation, to me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, interesting. I'm thinking about, I was just looking, I know you were at Hampton late 80s, early 90s. Is that right?
Yeah, 87 and 91.
Oh gosh, then we are the exact same years then.
Yeah.
I was at William and Mary at that exact same time.
Okay, yeah.
And
right down the street.
Exactly. I know we used to go to Hampton for things. But going back to the, you know, think about the finances, how you guys were able to pull it off, and you had your corporate sponsors. I was thinking about this today and reading some things before we talk. You guys just re-upped with Coke, apparently. And so I think it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the corporate dollars that come into, you know, the HBCUs. But I was wondering, how far does the relationship go? Are your student athletes or the students at your schools, are they getting jobs with Coke? Does that pipeline exist?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's part of the negotiation, right? Not having a transactional partnership, but having relationship with our partners that can plant seeds for job opportunities, mentorship opportunities. I actually just did an interview with Coke. They're doing, oh my God, it's an art program for media. It's actually a contest for HBCUs. If you're a writer, you're you want to produce. They're doing they've done this grant program, and they're getting ready to roll out like this red carpet. I apologize, I can't even remember why I can't even remember the name, but yes, there's stories in this conference with our partners, and I tell people this all the time. If you grew up in the CIAA and you came to the tournament, and let's say you were middle school, you came to our middle school program, then you went to high school. This is how Charlotte benefited. Then you went to our high school program. You left and graduated from the high school, and you decided, let's say you went to Johnson C. Smith University, and then you come back to the tournament, you Coca-Cola, Air Nationwide, Toyota, Food Lion, whomever, and they interview on the spot. You get a job, you get a internship there, then somehow you end up getting a full-time position there. Then somehow now you're a leader in the organization. There are a lot of stories like that from all of our partners. I'm always amazed, and we bring them back to tell the story. Some of our partners at our president's dinner will bring students back to tell their stories of how the CIAA and the access that they've had for jobs. An athlete one time, Ralph, volleyball player at Winston-Salem State, went to Career Expo at the tournament, met with NASA, never thought that her discipline that she was in could be translated into an opportunity at NASA. She interned at NASA that summer, and I believe she did a study, like something with feet in the air, something related to what she was studying, and she was looking to get hired full time. So yes, I mean, those are types of things. That's why I said it's way beyond the game. We want the athletes to have a good game, but we want them to see themselves with opportunities after the game. And I think we do a really good job doing with our partners.
And with that, I mean, I look at your career, and thinking about Title IX, how do you mentor young women that you come across, or what advice do you have for them? Especially for women who want to have careers in sports. I remember in grad school, there's a sister I went to school with, and she wanted to get into sports, and I was kind of like, that's going to be tough. You know what I mean? And I remember saying, you got to find a mentor, and she did, and she actually ended up having a career working in professional sports. But it's a glass ceiling, or a place that's hard to crack. So what advice do you have?
So I'm a member of the Women Leaders in College Sport. That organization probably helped me stay in the career path, even though at the time I was in it, there wasn't many that looked like me in it, and never thought a lot of things about being a part of that organization. I ended up being the president of the association in their 40th anniversary, which was pretty unique and an experience, and then had to lead the organization through COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement. So the timing of that is only God, I guess. I think being in the organization has allowed me to connect to a lot of women, particularly of color, that are looking for women like me to connect to. And so I've always opened my door and made myself available to them. When I speak and do panels at the NCAA for leadership development, and students want to connect to me, I make sure they have access to do that. Not directly, they can get with my assistant, I get them on my calendar. And I have a lot of mentees, men and women. As a matter of fact, one of my mentees now, she graduated from Lincoln. She went to Temple to get her master's. I created a scholarship because I got my master's from Temple for postgraduate scholarship for a student that graduated from HBCU that wants to go into the Temple sports management hospitality industry. I think she applied for it and got it. So that's crazy. Kind of cool. But she reached out to me recently. She just graduated from Temple. We just had this conversation, like, and she said she's applied. What I would tell people, it's not, the degrees are great. I had my degree with Temple, and I ended up being a receptionist for almost a year, because I just could not get in the industry. But it's really about who knows you. And that's how I got my job at Virginia Union. Dr. Thomas, who was the commissioner at the MEAC, I came back and spoke at the tournament. They asked me to be their keynote speaker, and that translated into, I need a volleyball coach, assistant basketball coach, SWA. You know, they're gonna work you to life anyways at our school. And so Coach Battle called Dennis Thomas. Dennis Thomas said, let me call Jacqie. And he said, there's a job at Virginia Union. He remembered me. You know, he was my AD at Hampton. They saw me. I got the postgraduate NCAA scholarship to go to grad school. I got it from CIAA. So they knew who I was. So they were tracking on my success from a distance, which is, and I always have to, when I speak that, I'm like, dang, they really did. They watched me and they knew who I was. And so what I told her is, it's not about the degrees. You need those. That gives you leverage, but who knows you in the industry? And since I know you, tell me where you want to go and let me make some calls for you. And she landed a job the other day from a call. And that's what we should all be doing. We should be making and opening doors for women of color, men of color who are struggling in the industry. I have the position and the platform to do that. And it's my responsibility to open up the door for the conversation of how can I, what do I need to, and maybe if I can help you get there, I'll do all that I can. And if I can, it's not because I didn't want to, the timing just may not be right. But definitely, you know, when you are in the industry, you need to connect with people who have the connections and create those relationships. And the beauty is, she's been connected to me since. She heard me speak at Temple. She reached out and she's been my mentee. And I said, if I talk to you every day or every other day or once a year, just know you can count on me. I got you. And that's, we all need that person or people surrounding us to encourage us to press on, because it is tough. There's not many of us in the industry, and we lose one, we get one.
Right.
We get two, we lose three. So I want to see more of us in the industry.
I think about what you're talking about, Dr. Thomas. I forgot that he was at Virginia Union. I really only think of him as commissioner of the MEAC.
Yeah, he was at Hampton, but he was good friends with the athletic director at Virginia Union.
At Virginia Union. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying he was at Union. But no, I think of him because my first job officiating college football was in the MEAC conference. And I think my second year there was when he became commissioner.
Yeah.
So he always came to the clinics and whatnot. So I definitely know him. And he's retiring, as you know.
Oh yeah, he's done. He's retired. He's gone.
So he's already gone. And so I'm totally shifting gears. Didn't even think about talking about this. So your president, Dr. Harvey, is retiring this year. So we are doing he's going to be one of the people that will be featured in Diverse Magazine in June in our retirement and tribute edition. So do you have a shout out for him?
I admire Dr. Harvey so much. I mean, for anybody to stay in the industry as long as he did is commendable, because that doesn't happen with president's roles. The one thing that I like and love about Dr. Harvey is that he stayed focused on that one thing of what he wanted that institution, our Hampton University, to look like and feel like. It didn't matter what anybody else said. He still stayed the course, right? I mean, we had President Bush at my graduation, and if you remember in '91 at the time, the whole controversy of Bush, my class protested. We were the ones who had our fist up and read a newspaper. My parents are like, if you don't get yourself together. I mean, that was intentional because it opened up some doors for Hampton.
Absolutely.
Right? We're 18, 19, we're 20, 21. We don't know what that is. We just know that we are advocates. You know, we're at Black College. That's where you learn to have your voice. We had voice. Regardless of that, he's always been very focused. And I just commend him for all the seeds that he has planted in the world for new leaders. There's so many people that are under his branches that he has opened up doors and maybe closed doors because he needed to. But on the most part, he has planted a lot of seeds and a lot of growth, and I'm part of that seed.
It's almost unfathomable how many years he's been at the lead there. And I mean, I've seen the growth as an outsider. You know, I have some family and friends that went to Hampton, and you know, you can see it. I mean, his legacy will definitely be beyond the years that he was there.
Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah, he left the foot.
yeah, I mean, no, without a doubt. So we're getting close to the end here. So again, just want to go back to Title IX just a little bit and just say, where do you hope to see, you know, sports in general or sports at the collegiate level over the next 50 years for women?
Wow. Golly, I hope in the next 50 years that we're not talking about the same things that we're talking about now. You know, like we're still less than 1% here, women of color, or we're still, you know, we're still having less pay equity, or we're still having all these lawsuits because we didn't do right by. And that's every law that we have, right? It's like this circle. Like, when will we stop saying that we don't have enough? We don't have enough women, or we don't have enough people of color? Or I'm hoping that in the next 50 years that every little girl and little boy feels like when they get out on the field or on the court that they have the uniforms that they need to play in, that they can ride safe, their mental wellness is protected because there's enough trainers, their coaches are qualified, and they have assistant coaches that can support the head coach, and that the innocence of sport remains. I feel like we're drifting away from the innocence of why we all wanted to play in the first place. So I hope in 50 years that I'll probably gone, even though I've asked God to let me live for a very long time.
Me too.
But I pray that my daughter will see the day when her children, that she doesn't have to go up to the school and find out why. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not doing the right thing. It's the thing that you're supposed to do.
Right.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah. You know, just thinking about this first 50 years, I think a lot of what I've read and heard over the years that, you know, the biggest beneficiary has been white women of color. I mean, not white women, white women, and not necessarily women of color. Do you agree with that? And how do you see that changing, or can it change?
I do agree. And it's always, you know, a testy, I don't want to say testy, because, you know, you're pushing buttons when you say that, but I do agree. I remember when I got in the industry and the women, the Black women in this conference, who didn't want to participate in other conferences where there was a majority of white women because they felt isolated.
Right.
And so they created their own spaces. You do have the Black Women's Sports Foundation up in Philadelphia. I remember being in their first meeting when they formulated that group. I was in grad school. But yeah, you know, it's Black women. Now, I'm not talking about women of color. I'm talking about Black women. We're always trailing. We're always trailing. You know, you got your white men, white women, Black men, women of color, Black women at the bottom.
Right.
We're always just trying to get, and every time there seems like there's an attention to help us navigate, something else comes in place that might appear to be more important than our access and opportunity. I'm hoping that gets better, Ralph. I don't know. Sometimes, you know, we go through this movement and you're like, wow, we're still operating back in the day in 2020, 2021, 2022. But I am committed to do my part.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, I look at some of the stuff we've covered in Diverse back in the 80s and 90s, and now it's 2020s. And sometimes I'm reading the same article that we published 30 years ago. But I will, you know, I was thinking about this, not that I really want to end on this, but we're almost out of time. Like, I look at, for example, this totally changed the subject, but Chowan, you guys have them as a football member. How does that work as far as having a non-HBCU participating in football.
Yeah, they were football and bowling, and now they're just football. And sometimes there's conversations around them trying to make sure. And I remember having a conversation with their president at the time. Do you feel included? Are we doing the things to make
that's the part I'm talking about?
Yeah, feel included. And the answer was yes, because again, everybody we just want to play. But the interesting thing, when your football team is majority brown, black and brown,
right.
That's easy for them. And I will tell you, when they decided to move out of the conference, how sad their athletes were, because they had that connection to community, and wanted, like, the cheerleaders wanted to, like, we still come back to the tournament, that kind of thing. And that's not how it works. And so I hope that we always made them feel a part of the conference. It could be tough, though, because the issues that we deal with as it relates to the presidents and what they look like compare. But I can tell you, the president at the time, Dr. White, he didn't waver in his voice. I mean, he was empathetic, and he listened, when there was concerns around his university or anything. So, that's what we should do anyway.
Right.
As a community, we don't all have to look alike, or we can look alike, but how to respect and value the differences. And even if we disagree, how do you create a sense of belonging for the people that are a part of your community?
Right.
I would feel horrible to know that Shawan did not feel a part of the CIAA. That was our responsibility. I wasn't here when they brought them, but when I got there, that was my job to sustain, that relationship with them.
Yeah. You talk about your president, or that president. What is do you feel, and we'll close on this, the biggest challenge that your presidents have today moving forward?
I think the biggest challenge, always enrollment, but again, we talked a little bit about the Black Lives Matter, and some of our schools really benefited so well. Enrollment is up.
Right.
I think for me, as their commissioner, and what I see across, is keeping up with the trends, the trends of what's around you, right? CIAA, we can be in our own silo and we do well. We are killing. But what happens when we get out of that? Are we still competing, particularly on the sports side? Can we compete with those schools in our region outside of that? So I think there are challenges making sure, the necessary resources are there for athletics, when athletics are probably an auxiliary to many of our state schools. Like, where do you find those funds to make sure? I think some of the challenges, I was on a call earlier today about keeping people employed. They're shifting where they want to be and how much time they want to spend, right? Whether they, sports information, media, whatever it is, you spend so much time in these positions. And what we've learned is you can do your job just like this. And people are not interested in giving up that time anymore. So I think being creative, I think they're going to have to continue to be creative with the trends of what's happening in higher ed, the trends of what college athletics is starting to look like, and how do we continue to compete with some of the things that we just won't ever have the resources to do. Some of the baseline things. What can we do baseline? And I'm thankful that they are not shying away from that conversation, and that we will somehow come together and figure out, as we've said, what do we want the conference to look like? And as I've shared with them, I want to see more parity amongst our institutions, from scholarships to hiring coaches, to athletic fields. And that takes resources to get there. But are there baseline things that we can agree on collectively that will really allow our brand to continue to shine the way that it does?
No, and the brand is great. It is. I mean, people definitely gravitate to the CIAA. Look, thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. We talked for an hour. I feel like I have so many more questions. We could talk for another hour. But
Oh,
again, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to talking to you in the